There comes a time in life when the walls close in, when the options run out, when the people you thought you could count on vanish, and when the road before you looks blocked with no way forward. It's in that moment when your strength is gone, when your ideas are exhausted, and when your heart feels heavy, that you need to remember God will provide a way. You may not see it right now. You may not feel it right now. Everything around you may scream possible, but the word impossible doesn't live in the vocabulary of God. When he says he is your provider, he means he has already made provision before you even recognize the problem. He is not scrambling to figure out how to fix your situation. He already has the solution in place. Before you ever cried your first tear, before you ever fought your first battle, before you ever felt the sting of betrayal or the weight of disappointment, God already had a plan in place. That's the thing about his wisdom. It is not reactive, it is proactive. What shakes you never shakes him. What surprises you never surprises him. When the storm rose up in your life, when the diagnosis came back, when the door slammed in your face, heaven did not scramble to find an answer. The answer was already spoken into existence long before the problem showed up. Think about it. When the children of Israel were trapped between Pharaoh's army and the Red Sea, they thought it was the end. Their cries were full of fear. Their eyes saw only death, but God had already made provision. The wind was waiting to blow. The waters were waiting to part. The dry ground was already prepared beneath the sea. What looked like a dead end was actually the stage set for deliverance. That's how God works. He doesn't wait until you're in trouble to figure out a plan. He already had the escape route written into the script of your life. That means your struggles are not accidents. Your pain is not random. The obstacles you face are not beyond his power. When you stand before what feels like an impossible situation, you must remind yourself, this is not a surprise to the one who holds me. He knew the rejection was coming. He knew the storm would rise. He knew the enemy would try to attack. And yet, in spite of it all, he still declared, I will never leave you nor forsake you. If he promised to be with you, then that means provision is already tied to your journey. Sometimes the hardest thing for us to accept is that God's timing does not match ours. We want him to show us the plan before the storm, but he often waits until we are standing in the middle of the mess to reveal the way. Why? Because if you saw the way out too soon, you would try to walk in your own strength. If you knew the plan ahead of time, you might think it was your wisdom that got you through. But when he waits until the midnight hour, when he waits until the Red Sea is lapping at your feet, when he waits until Pharaoh's army is breathing down your neck, then when he moves, there is no confusion about who made the way. You will know, and everyone around you will know, that it was God. So don't panic when life takes you by surprise. Don't collapse under the weight of what you don't understand. The same God who fed Elijah with ravens, who rained down manna from heaven, who brought water out of a rock, who delivered Daniel from the lions and the Hebrew boys from the fire, that same God is writing your story. He already knew where the attack would come from, and he already built the strategy for your survival. Your job is not to have it all figured out. Your job is to trust that he does. Your responsibility is to stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. The plan was in place before the problem arose. The answer was spoken before the question formed. The way was made before you even got lost. And if you can hold on to that truth, you will find strength in the middle of your weakness, peace in the middle of your chaos, and hope in the middle of what looks like a hopeless situation. God always has a plan before you see the problem. Always. And if you can believe that, then you can walk through any valley, face any enemy, and confront any storm with confidence, knowing that your victory is not being written. It's already been written. Time when life presses you into a corner, when every option you thought you had dries up, when the road you were walking suddenly ends in a wall you cannot climb. That is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of God's revelation of his power. He allows us to step into impossible situations, not to destroy us, but to show us who he is. If everything in your life could be explained by logic, if every blessing could be credited to your connections, your intelligence, or your hard work, then you would never need faith. But faith flourishes in the soil of the impossible. The Red Sea was impossible. A body of water stretching as far as the eye could see, with no bridge, no boats, and no way across. Behind them, Pharaoh's army with chariots and weapons, ready to strike them down. By human standards, there was no way out. But God specializes in what man calls impossible. He turned an ocean into a highway. He took a dead end and transformed it into deliverance. The same truth applies to you. Your greatest impossibilities are God's greatest opportunities. Think about the walls of Jericho. They were fortified, impenetrable, impossible to conquer. Yet God didn't need weapons. He didn't need ladders or catapults. He simply needed obedience. The people marched, they shouted, and the walls fell flat. That's what happens when God steps into the impossible. It collapses under His command. What once intimidated you becomes the very evidence of His power. We spend so much time avoiding situations that seem too hard, too overwhelming, too beyond us. But if you never faced the impossible, you would never know God as a miracle worker. If you never stood at the Red Sea, you would never know He could part it. If you never felt the sting of the fiery furnace, you would never know He could walk you through without a burn. If you never faced the lion's den, you would never know He could shut the mouths of lions. Impossible situations are not punishment. They are platforms for God to display His glory. And let's be real, it's uncomfortable when you're standing there. Fear grips your heart, doubt whispers in your ear, and your mind races with worst case scenarios. You cry out, Lord, why would you let me get here? Why would you allow me to come this far just to face this wall? But what if the wall isn't there to stop you, but to reveal Him? What if the enemy breathing down your neck isn't there to destroy you, but to prove that no weapon formed against you shall prosper? What if the impossibility is not a curse, but a setup for your miracle? God has a pattern of waiting until every resource is exhausted, every ally is gone, every door is shut, and then showing up in power. That way, when He moves, there's no question who deserves the glory. You won't be able to say, it was my strength, my wisdom, my effort. No, you'll have to lift your hands and declare, if it had not been for the Lord, I would not have made it. So the next time you stare down the impossible, shift your perspective. Instead of panicking, pause and remind yourself, this is the perfect place for God to show up. This is the perfect moment for Him to reveal His strength in my weakness. What looks like the end is actually the beginning of a testimony. What seems unfixable is about to become unforgettable. Impossible situations are not barriers, they are stages for God's glory. And when He moves, not only will you come out victorious, but you'll never again doubt what He can do. So when God provides, it rarely looks like what we imagined. We expect Him to come in one way, with the answer wrapped in a neat package that fits our desires, but He has a way of turning our expectations upside down. His provision doesn't always align with our preferences, but it always aligns with His purpose. Sometimes the blessing is disguised as a loss. Sometimes the open door is revealed through a closed one. And sometimes the miracle shows up in a way that makes no sense at all until you look back. Think of the children of Israel wandering in the wilderness. They expected provision to look like abundance from familiar lands, but instead God gave them manna from heaven, bread they had never seen before, something they couldn't explain. They even asked, "What is this?" Because it didn't look like food to them, yet it was the very thing that kept them alive. Isn't that how God works? The job you lost made room for the career you never thought you could have. The relationship that ended broke your heart, but positioned you for one that will honor your destiny. The detour you resented ended up saving your life. His provision does not always look like what you prayed for, but it is exactly what you needed. We get frustrated because we hold on to our picture of how God should bless us. We want Him to fix that person, to restore that situation, to make that dream happen exactly as we imagine. But God's thoughts are higher than ours, His ways greater than ours. If He chooses not to fix what you wanted fixed, it's because He has something better prepared. Sometimes He doesn't repair the old door, He builds a new one. Sometimes He doesn't bring the person back, He heals you enough that you no longer need them. Sometimes He doesn't restore the familiar. He introduces you to something brand new. We often confuse provision with preference. We think God is not providing because it doesn't match our desire. But real provision isn't about comfort. It's about destiny. He doesn't just give you what you want. He gives you what will carry you into your purpose. That's why provision sometimes feels painful. That's why His answers sometimes sting. Because He is pulling away what you thought was necessary in order to make room for what truly is. Look at Elijah by the brook. When the brook dried up, It looked like failure, it looked like the end, but the same God who had fed him with ravens directed him to a widow's house. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't look like much. A starving widow with nothing but a handful of meal and a little oil was not the provision Elijah expected. But that small jar didn't run out. That little became much because God was in it. What looked insufficient was more than enough because his hand was on it. You may be despising the very thing God sent to sustain you because it doesn't look like your expectation. You may be overlooking the miracle because it doesn't match the picture in your head. Don't reject the manna. Don't despise the small jar. Don't curse the closed door. What you call strange, he calls supply. What you call loss, he calls alignment. What you call disappointment, he calls direction. So lift your eyes above your preferences and trust his provision. Stop asking him to only come the way you imagined. He is too great to be boxed into your plans. When he provides, it might not look like what you expected, but it will always be exactly what you need. And when you look back, you will realize that his provision was never late, never lacking, and never wrong. It was perfect all along. Sometimes God provides in ways that stretch your faith because he is not just supplying your needs, he is shaping your trust. He is not merely putting food on your table, he is teaching you to depend on him when the cupboards are empty. He is not only opening doors, he is training you to believe that even when doors shut, he is still in control. Provision is not just about the physical resources you see. It's about cultivating the spiritual maturity to know that your source is never the job, the person, or the opportunity. It is always him. This is why he allows seasons of lack not to punish you, but to prepare you. He allows things to dry up because he wants to break your dependence on temporary sources. The brook may dry up, but the God of the brook is still flowing. When people walk away, he is still there. When resources run out, he is still enough. If you never experienced the absence, you would never learn that his presence is sufficient. If you never saw the well run dry, you would never discover that he is the living water. If you never faced the empty jar, you would never encounter the God who multiplies. Faith is not proven when the table is full, but when the table is bare and you still bless his name. Trust is not developed when everything works as planned, but when nothing makes sense and you still declare he will provide. That's the kind of faith that grows when God provides in unexpected ways. He uses the stretching seasons to elevate your perspective. So you stop praising the brook and start praising the one who commands the brook. And when he provides, it may not be in abundance right away. It may come in small increments, just enough for today. That's what the manna was, daily bread. Not a week's supply, not a month's guarantee, but enough for that day. Because God was not trying to just feed them. He was teaching them to lean on him every morning. We often want God to give us the whole blueprint, the full bank account, the complete picture. But sometimes he gives you just enough light for the step you're on, because he wants you to walk by faith and not by sight. There is power in learning to trust him daily, to wake up and say, Lord, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I believe you've already made a way. That is what builds a resilient faith, a faith that can't be shaken by the winds of change, a faith that won't collapse when resources shift. Because if your faith is tied to things, it will crumble when things change. But if your faith is tied to God, it will stand no matter what happens. The stretching is uncomfortable. It feels uncertain. It feels like you're walking on water with nothing beneath you. But it is in that tension that you discover who he really is. Not just a provider of things, but the provider of life itself. You find out that your identity, your peace, your joy is not in what he gives you, but in who he is to you. And once you learn that lesson, you stop panicking when resources run out. You stop losing sleep when people walk away. You stop doubting when the brook dries up, because you know the source has never left. So don't be discouraged if your provision feels small. Don't despise the season of just enough. Don't think he's forgotten you because it doesn't look like overflow yet. He's training you, stretching you, teaching you to lean. And when you come out of this season, you'll have a faith that no storm can shake and a confidence that no enemy can steal. Because you'll know beyond a shadow of a doubt that he always provides. And when God provides a way, it is often not the way you expected. And that's what confuses so many of us. We think provision should come neatly wrapped with everything aligned perfectly, But God has a way of disguising his miracles in unexpected packages. The answer may come through a stranger, the open door may look like rejection first, and the blessing may feel like a burden before it unfolds. That's why you cannot judge what God is doing by the first glance. You've got to trust that he knows what he is doing even when it doesn't look like what you prayed for. Sometimes God will let the obvious door close so that you don't get stuck thinking the blessing was in the door. He closes what you thought you needed so you'll walk toward what he ordained. He hides your breakthrough in places you would never expect, so that when you arrive, you'll know it wasn't your networking, your talent, or your effort. It was his hand guiding you all along. What looks like detours are divine setups. What looks like delays are God's perfect timing. What looks like rejection is actually protection. Provision is not just about giving you something. It's about aligning you with his will. If he gave you what you wanted when you wanted it, you might destroy it, or it might destroy you. So instead, he provides in ways that prepare you. He routes you through seasons that feel like wilderness, but they are actually training grounds. He hides you in places that feel obscure, but he is building your character. He stretches your patience, not to frustrate you, but to strengthen you. When the door finally opens, you'll walk through it with the maturity to carry what he has placed in your hands. You may think you're being overlooked, but the truth is you're being prepared. You may feel delayed, but really you are being developed. Every step, every closed door, every unexpected turn is part of the way he is providing for you. Because if he let you run ahead without the lesson, the blessing would crush you. But when he lets you walk through the fire and still come out standing, you carry an authority that can't be shaken. You'll be able to handle the weight of the promise because you've been forged in the waiting. And here's the beauty. When he finally reveals the way, it often looks so clear you wonder how you didn't see it before. You look back and realize that what you thought was random was orchestrated. What you thought was wasted time was preparation. What you thought was pain was actually pruning. Everything was connected. Every tear, every test, every trial was leading you to the place where his provision was waiting. That's why you can't give up in the middle. Don't let your impatience rob you of the blessing that's being birthed in the hidden places. Don't let discouragement talk you out of what God is working behind the scenes. The provision is coming, but it's coming in a way that you can't predict. It won't look like your plan, but it will fit his purpose. And when it arrives, you'll realize he didn't just provide the way. He became the way. So lift your head, dry your tears, and keep walking. Even if you don't see the door yet, even if you don't understand the turns, trust that he has already made a way where there seemed to be no way. And when you step into it, you will know that it was orchestrated by his hand and not by your effort. The path may feel uncertain now, but it will end in the place he promised. He never fails, and he always makes a way. When God provides a way, he doesn't just open doors for you, he equips you to walk through them. It's not enough to stand in front of opportunity. You must have the strength, the faith, and the courage to move into it. Too many people pray for blessings, but are not prepared to handle the weight that comes with them. That's why God doesn't only provide the way, he also shapes you along the way. He doesn't just give you a destination. He builds in you the endurance to reach it. He places tools in your hand, resilience in your spirit, and wisdom in your mind. So when the provision shows up, you are ready to steward it well. You see, every challenge you faced was not meant to destroy you. It was meant to equip you. That storm you survived gave you endurance. That heartbreak gave you discernment. That setback taught you resilience. God never wastes pain. He uses it as training ground. And while you were crying over what you lost, heaven was equipping you with something you didn't even know you needed. The very battles you thought would break you were actually forging in you the strength to carry the blessing you prayed for. When you feel weak, it's because you're being reminded to lean on him. When you feel stretched, it's because you're being prepared to carry more. When you feel like giving up, it's because the weight of destiny is pressing down on you, but that pressure is shaping you into someone who can handle the next level. Provision isn't just about what you receive, it's about who you become in the process of receiving it. God is not just concerned about getting you there, he's concerned about what you will do once you arrive. So often we look at others and think they were handed opportunities, But what you don't see are the nights they wrestled in the dark, the seasons of obscurity where nobody noticed them, the moments where they almost quit but didn't. The preparation is always hidden. The equipping is always behind the scenes. That's why when the blessing comes, it looks sudden to people, but it's never sudden. It's the manifestation of years of God shaping and molding you for the very thing He's placed in your path. And here's the part that many overlook. When God equips you, He doesn't just give you what you need for yourself. He gives you more than enough so you can pour into others. Your provision isn't just for your survival, it's for someone else's deliverance. Your wisdom, your testimony, your strength, none of it was meant to be hoarded. The equipping God gives you is so that when someone else is struggling, you can be a voice of hope, a reminder that if God made a way for you, He will make a way for them too. That's why you can't despise your preparation season. You can't curse the process. You can't complain about the pruning, because while it feels painful now, it's producing something in you that will carry you for the rest of your life. God is not just giving you fish. He's teaching you how to fish. He's not just handing you bread. He's giving you the ability to multiply it. He's not just bringing you through a storm. He's giving you the authority to speak peace in storms to come. So walk with confidence, knowing that you are already equipped. You are not lacking. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. Everything you need has been deposited inside of you. And when the moment comes to step into the way God has prepared, you won't be scrambling. You won't be insecure. You won't be empty. You'll be ready. Because He never calls you to a place without equipping you for it. He never sends you into a battle without giving you the armor. And He never opens a door without first preparing you to walk through it. The way may not look clear right now, but trust this, not only has He provided the way, He has provided you everything necessary to walk it out with strength, with courage, and with victory.